welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Kirsten and it's time for my December wrap up, and I've had a really good month. I won't lie, I am filming this a few days early, but I know that the two current books that I'm listening to and reading I will definitely finish by the end of the month, so I've included those in my statistics for the month. So at the end of this month I have read 11 books, which is 4,602 pages, which is pretty good going. 2 of those books were rereads, and then I've had 1 DNF, 4 5-star reads, 2 4-star reads, and 5 3-star reads. So on average this month has actually been a bit less than my previous 2 months, with certainly a lot more 3-star reads, but let's stop talking statistics and get straight to the books. So the book I'm currently physically reading that I know I will get finished up before January is Empire of Storms by Sarah J Maas. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, and for those of you that don't know, I am currently in the middle of my reread of the Throne of Glass series, which I tend to reread at least once a year because I love it. Although I normally binge read the whole thing, whereas this time I'm actually taking it slow and reading it 1 to 2 books per month, and I've definitely enjoyed it more because it's nice having that distinction between each book and then anticipating what's going to happen next. It's been really enjoyable, and if you don't know what this series is about, I will be shocked. First of all, I've spoken about it stacks of times, and Sarah J Maas is a massively hyped author on booktube and bookstagram. She's done the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, she's done Crescent City, which is her newest adult fantasy works. Like, there's just so much that she's done. So yes, this is her YA series. It was the first series that she did and it's so good. I really enjoy it, and we have the progression from book 1 throughout the series of the stakes getting higher, more and more characters being involved, and there's just so much that goes on. You've got magic and politics, and there's just so much. It's such a great series that honestly, if you haven't read it, give it a try. And I'm also listening to an audiobook which is Merciful by Margret, Owen, and I've literally got 3 chapters left of this, so I know I'm going to get that finished probably today. And that's a really interesting one, although I think it's going to come out as a 3 stars. I've included Empire of Storms as one of my 5 stars for the month because it's a reread. I know that's how it's going to be, and Merciful Crow is looking at a 3 star at the moment, but that's because when I've been listening to it I have been busy doing other things, and so sometimes I miss some things that have been said about the book, and because I don't have it physically I haven't been reading alongside at certain points. So honestly, I'm enjoying it. It's a really interesting world. It was recommended by Bobbie from Bobbie's Dusty Pages, who I'll have linked below. She really enjoyed this, and it is an interesting concept. We have a world where people are divided into different ranks, and each rank is signified by a different bird, and within those ranks you have the ability to do different things. Not every single one, but witches among that rank have the ability to do different things, but at the same time as all of this there is a disease going around that is highly contagious and can kill people. However, one particular rank, which is crows, is immune to this disease. There's so much that goes on. You have the intricacies from that world and just the social dynamics in it. We also have politics involved because our main character gets pulled into this dispute that's going on, and you see that the harsh reality is that crows are needed but not wanted, and the way they are treated because of it. It's a really good series, and I am going to pick up the book physically, and I think when I physically read it it would easily be a 4-star read, but because I haven't been paying as much attention as I should be, it is coming in at 3 stars at the moment. Then I'm going to talk about the book I DNF'd for the month, and that was Vox by Christina Dalcher. This is a book that I think I would listen to if it was an audiobook, but not one that I can physically read, and that's because it's so dense. We're in our world, however, women in America are only allowed to say 100 words per day. Some extreme Christianity has taken over America and have decided that women should be subjugated and that their sole purpose in life is to be a good housewife. They're not allowed to go to work, they're not allowed to read and write, and they're only allowed to say 100 words per day, and it's mad. We're seeing this a year after everything has taken place that's now been implemented, and we're following a woman who has 2 boys and a daughter. Before this, literally a year ago, she was working and she was a doctor and expert in her field, and now she has all of that taken away from her. It is an interesting concept, which is why I'm saying I would definitely listen to it on audiobook, but physically for me this is a bit dense and I know I'd get bored of reading it, so I have put it down. I got to chapter 12 and like I said, if it comes up on audiobook I will definitely be listening to this because I do think it's an interesting take on everything and seeing how the rights of people can be taken away so easily. But yeah, it's not something I would happily pick up and sit down and read. So continuing on with audiobooks, I listened to The Butterfly Garden by Dr. Hutchinson. This was a recommendation that I picked up because of Christina from Christina Campbell Books. Again, I will have her linked below. She reads a lot of murder mysteries and thrillers, and so whenever she says that she's enjoyed one, I tend to pick it up to see what it's all about. And this one was a super interesting one. I really liked it. It came out at 4 stars, and at points I was reading alongside it as well because I was really engrossed in what's happening. We are set up in an interview format, which is super interesting. So this girl has escaped from something called the Butterfly Garden, where the gardener would kidnap girls, tattoo butterfly wings onto them, and then eventually kill them. It was so chilling in places because we're seeing everything from our main character's perspective. However, we know that she's not reliable and we're not sure if she's telling us the full truth of what's going on, and she's not being that helpful with the investigators at all, and it's just really eerie. I'm not gonna lie, it was really creepy and I just was captured. I desperately wanted to know what was happening. I finished this off in 2 days. I will say what kept it from being a 5-star read for me is the ending. I do feel the ending lets it down slightly and the big reveal was just not that interesting at all. I think it could have gone a different way and been a lot more like, oh my god, wow. It was really good though. I really enjoyed the writing style. I'll definitely be trying out more of Dr. Hutchinson's work because I really enjoyed it. It was really gripped and, like I said, very chilling, and it was just super creepy and I wanted to know what was going on. And yeah, there is stacks of trigger warnings in this, as you would expect, so please look those up before going into it, but this was a really interesting one in such a creepy, eerie way. It was very good. I also listened to Sword of Fire by Katherine Kerr, and this one was a 3-star read. It was a 5-star prediction for me and it had a lot of promise because in this synopsis it talks about how there's loads of Celtic mythology going on and I was really intrigued. We are set in a world where there is lots of politics going on and we have 3 main characters. 2 of them are fighting for rights for people to be able to have a fair and just legal system, one that isn't skewed just towards nobility or to people that can buy people off, but one that is actually fair for everyone. So I loved that, what they were fighting for. I thought that was really interesting and honestly that was really well fleshed out, the politics and stuff, and it was really exceptional. However, where it let itself down is the characters. The interaction between the characters could have been fleshed out, characters could have been developed a bit more, and the relationships that end up happening in this were so fast paced. It was like a wham bam thank you ma'am type situation. It was just like, what? I couldn't really get behind that. I will possibly pick up the next book. This is actually a book that's set in a world where Katherine Kerr's already done a 15-book long series, which is mind-boggling, and this is set 300 years after that. I think if I had read the other books, maybe I would have a better feel for this world. As it is, there are some things that I didn't like about this. The way it talked about coloured people, it was only one quick mention, but I still think it was a bit distasteful and not well done, especially when you're in a fantasy world. I can understand that if we're in Celtic way back in the past, yes, those sort of things would have been said and thought about, but is it necessary in a fantasy book when you can change that and make it so that your world is better? But personally I think you could have done that and handled it a bit better. I also didn't like how much honour was such a massive thing in this. Like, women had to be careful of not upsetting man's honour and all, and it was just like, for reals? Like, there were points where I was just rolling my eyes at the way the characters were interacting. As I said, the actual world and the politics was interesting, but the characters just weren't my favourite, so it ended up as 3 stars. However, still love the cover, and that's the sole reason why I bought this. Okay, then on to my physical books for the month, and one of them was Jane Slayer. Now this is a take on the classic Jane Eyre. Now Jane Eyre is one of my favourite classic stories. I think it's absolutely amazing. I love so many things about that book. There are so many amazing quotes in that book, and Jane Slayer was good. Obviously it's got the vibes of Jane Eyre because we are following the same story. However, there are masses of character dialect that is taken out of this, which I'm so upset about. And there are certain quotes that would not have changed the outcome of this book that were taken out, which I just don't understand. So Jane Slayer is obviously a twist on Jane Eyre, and it is a vampire twist. So we have Jane Eyre, who is actually a vampire slayer, and she ends up at Lowood School where there's zombies involved, and there's a lot of stuff going on in this. And I think if you haven't read Jane Eyre but are interested in it but a bit worried about the writing style, then this one would be an interesting one to start off with. It will give you the feel for Jane Eyre without the older writing style. But as I said, as someone that loves the classic of Jane Eyre, I couldn't understand why certain things were taken out of the actual story. I understood how they worked in the vampires and werewolves and everything, and I thought that was really cleverly done, but I don't agree with the fact that they took out so much of the original story for no reason. Like, there are certain quotes that I just... Basically, I got upset about my weekly vlog as well, and I went on for a while, and I'm doing it again with this because there was so much potential in this book, because I love vampires, I love twists on classics, but there was just too much of the original taken out, which, considering this is supposed to be a rewritten Jane Eyre, so there are parts of this book which are word for word exactly what happens in Jane Eyre. I can't understand why you keep some of it and not all of it, and it ended up as 3 stars. It had potential, it could have been better, but never mind, we're moving on. Another 3-star read. Honestly, this month was just full of 3-star reads, and that's Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, and oh my god, was this disappointing. Like, I knew it was going to be disappointing, but I am just so disappointed anyway. So this is the 3rd book in the Grishaverse trilogy, and it's a massively hyped series. Leigh Bardugo is another massively hyped author. We have the Six of Crows duology and loads of other books that she's done, and I did enjoy Shadow and Bone. I gave that book 4 stars. I thought it had a lot of potential. We're in a world where there are people called Grisha who have different abilities. Some can summon the elements, some are able to heal or kill people through healing. I did a terrible job of explaining that. They're heart renders. They can basically stop someone's heart, but the flip side of that, they can also heal. And then we have people that are metal workers, and it is interesting. I like the way our main character was very naive in the 1st book. She was misled and ended up using her powers for worse rather than what she had hoped it would be for. And then we get into the 2nd book, and I didn't like it at all. I found that Mal was a very irritating character, and honestly, that book, there was just no need for it. The 3rd one is better than the 2nd one. I will say that. We start off on an interesting way at first, but the ending of this was very predictable, very boring, and the way that the Darkling was handled was just... he's supposed to be this really, like, all-powerful summoner of darkness that's lived for thousands of years, and instead he's like easily killed off at the end, and I'm like, oh, is that it? Like, honestly, he was the best character in the book, and he gets such a crap death that I was just like, nah. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I don't know if I'm going to carry on with Six of Crows. A lot of people do prefer Six of Crows, but I can't tell if it's just Leigh Bardugo's writing that I don't like, or whether it was just this book. So yeah, overall 3 stars, because it was a bit better than the 2nd one, but it still wasn't as good as Shadow and Bone. So it got a higher 3 stars than Siege and Storm, but yeah, I was just disappointed by this. I think maybe if I read it while I was younger, I would have preferred it, but as it stands now, not really for me. And we come to my 2nd reread of the month, and that's Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 3rd book in the Mistborn trilogy, and of course a 5-star read. It was a reread. I knew it was going to be 5 stars, but I've actually only read this book once before, and that was years ago, so it was basically like reading it for the first time again, apart from the fact that when certain things happen, I would start remembering the things that were to come. And it's just such a clever series. Brandon Sanderson's such an amazing adult fantasy writer. I think his works are really, really well done, especially his Cosmere. It's definitely the best out of all his writing is the Cosmere works. I think it's amazing. And in this world, we are following... I'll talk about the 1st book because honestly anything past that is just spoilers. We're following our main character Vin, and she is what we call a Mistborn. Now, Mistborn are people that can ingest metals and do different abilities with it as a result. There are people called Mistings who only can ingest one type of metal and do one thing, and then you have the very rare Mistborn. Now, in this society, Vin is a Scar, and Scar are horribly oppressed. They are kept subjugated by the Dark Lord, and the Dark Lord has one. He is the ruler, the emperor of this world, and Vin falls in with this group of people who are rebelling against that and trying to overthrow him. You do get multiple character perspectives in this, but it's really well done. Brilliant magic system, it's really well explained, so if it's your first foray into adult fantasy and magic systems, this is a really good series to start off with because it's so well explained. The second book takes place a year later. That is dealing with more the politics of the world and the political fallout from everything that's happened, and then this book is taking place a year after the second book, and this is a lot more about survival and trying to survive what has happened at the end of it. And I can't say much more than that because it gives away spoilers, but safe to say it's a really good series. Brandon Sanderson is one of those authors that I just really recommend for adult fantasy. I think his work is amazing. And we have another 5-star read, and oh my god, did this book make me cry, and that's Night of the Dragon by Julie Kagawa, and it was an amazing wrap up to a trilogy. So the trilogy starts with Shadow of the Fox, and we're following our main character Yumeko, who is a kitsune fox, because this world is steeped with Japanese mythology. It's so well done. But in this we are following Yumeko as she is trying to take a piece of the dragon scroll to a sacred temple for safekeeping, and along the way she convinces a caged samurai soldier to go with her and escort her there. In return, he thinks he's going to get the dragon scroll. He doesn't realise that Yumeko's had it on her the whole time, but she's a kitsune fox, she's a trickster by nature, so it works. We also pick up a band of characters along the way, and they all grow to have such amazing friendship bonds. It's absolutely wonderful. There is some amazing fight scenes in this that honestly it's like watching an anime. It's so good, and there's just so much. You have friendship and love and loss and just fight scenes, and it's just so good. And the world is so richly created because it's based on mythology. It's just so well done. And in this third book, the stakes are high. You have, in the first 80 pages, like 3 different battle scenes going on, which is just honestly amazing. Most of these books are travelling stories though, so bear that in mind because they're constantly travelling to a different destination to try and stop the event of the Dragon Scroll. So if you're not as into travelling stories, then you may not enjoy this, but honestly I would say still give it a try because everything else around it, the friendship, the world building, everything is done so well that I definitely think it's worth it even if you don't enjoy travelling stories as much. This was it was so good. Chapter 24 broke me, and I will stand by that forever. I have never cried so much at a book. It was just beautiful. I loved it so much. It's definitely going to be a series that I'm going to keep recommending and keep rereading because I think it's absolutely wonderful. And yeah, what can I say? I think it's brilliant. Give this one a try. And my last 3-star read for the month was still Prince graphic novel volume 2 by V.E. Schwab. This is the prequel to Darker Shades of Magic trilogy, and I really enjoyed that trilogy. I enjoy all of Victoria Schwab's works, and I picked these up because honestly I'm starting to get into graphic novels, and V.E. Schwab is an author by author anyway, so I thought it would be a really good one to try, and I do like it. I do like the story. I think the artwork is amazing. I think they're really well done. However, I've read other graphic novels since the first one of this, and I can say that they definitely do jump about a bit much compared to other graphic novels. It is well done. I like the storyline, but we do jump from point to point quite a lot, which makes it a very quick read, but also kind of jars me from the story because it jumps so much. And maybe that's just me, and I am so used to reading physically that it doesn't jump as much, where you have all the connecting words to get you from one point to the next point. It's just, in this one we don't have that. And yes, you have the artwork and the character dialogue, but there are some things where it does just jump. So one minute we're in the train and the next minute we're somewhere else, and there's no connecting part to that. So it's why I ended up giving it 3 stars. I do love the artwork, I do love the story behind it. I just wish it flowed a bit better for me personally. Okay, and the final book I need to talk about for December's wrap up is Lightbringer by Claire Legrand. This is the 3rd in a trilogy, and it was so good. I really enjoyed this. It did not end the way I thought it was going to at all. Ended up being 4 stars. I really thought it was going to be a 5-star read, but it just missed off that mark when I was putting it through Core Pile, and it's so good. I really enjoyed it. So in this trilogy we are following 2 timelines. One is set pretty much now, and in that timeline we're following someone called Riel. Now Riel is an elemental. In this world, elementals are only meant to have control over one element and generally need something to amplify their power. However, Riel is a very special case because she has control over all the elements and needs nothing to help access that power. She can access it all on her own. Because of this, she is told that she has to prove that she has control over her powers, is put through these really grueling, horrible tasks, is treated quite poorly, and she quite understandably gets fed up with this. Now the problem with her getting fed up with it is it allows an angel access to her mind, and he starts putting little whispers, putting little seeds of doubt so that she starts changing, and instead of becoming this better person that she's meant to be, she starts going down the wrong path, and it's super interesting. So in case you don't know, angels in this world aren't good. They are bad guys in this world. Actually, it's very interesting. There's a lot of history about it, and it does explain it really well throughout these books. In the second timeline, we are following Elena, and that's taken place 1,000 years in the future. Elena is a mercenary, and we're following the timeline from there. At that point, the Emperor, so the angel, has won. It's really interesting because I like seeing how these two timelines converge, how they weave together, how they affect one another with everything that's going on. The magic system's super interesting. I love the angel aspect in this, and we do have some very morally grey characters. Now I know some people don't like Elena's storyline, and I understand it, but I think it does work really well, and they all come to a head in this third book. So the only thing that's frustrating is that each chapter is a different person's perspective. So in the first book you'll have Riel, and then you'll have Elena, and then it'll go back to Riel, then it'll go to Elena, and the only frustrating thing with that is that you just want to just read everything of one character, because each chapter will end on a sort of cliffhanger and then the next person will come in. But the writing's so good that you still enjoy each character's perspective, or at least I did. Claire Legrand's now a new author that I definitely want to read more of her work because I really enjoyed this trilogy, and like I said, I think it wrapped up really well. I didn't see the twists that were happening at the end. It was just really engaging, really fun, didn't expect any of it, and highly recommend. And the very last book I want to talk to you about is my book of the month, and that is an audiobook, which is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This was an amazing book that I definitely want to get a physical format of because it was so darn good. Now, I gave this book 5 stars. It was book of the month for me. It is a storyline where we have Mary Jekyll. Now Mary Jekyll is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, and her mother has just died, and she then realizes that there is more going on around her father than what she first thought. So we do have influence from Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. We have Sherlock Holmes that makes an appearance. We have influence from Dracula and Frankenstein and so many other horror classics. It's really interesting. But what's even more interesting is that Mary Jekyll discovers that her father was part of this society of alchemists who are experimenting on their daughters, and so she finds the other daughters. So we have a daughter of Mr. Hyde, which Mary was totally shocked at upon realising that, holy hell, I have a sister, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are the same person. Massive. Brilliantly well done, which honestly is not a spoiler if you know the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So then we also have a daughter of an alchemist who is now poisonous. Like, she's become poisonous through the experimentations that he's done. There's so much. Honestly, it's such an amazing book. If you like Victorian England settings with some mystery going on with classic horror influence, this is such a good series. And alongside this, we also have the background of the Stalking Jack the Ripper murders, which everything about it I really enjoyed. I loved the setting, I loved the characters, I loved the formatting of the book, because it's written as if they are currently writing the book as we are reading it. There are little parts where they interrupt each other, where they'll go, oh, but were you really thinking that? And oh, is that necessary to put in? And if you do not behave, like, it's so interesting the way it's done. So you do have those little snippets that kind of interrupt the story, and then the writer is literally going, can I please get back to writing? And it's all left in. It's honestly so clever. I really enjoyed it, and like I said, desperately want to get in physical format. Best book I read this month. I enjoyed the audiobook version of it so much, and I cannot wait to get the physical copy because I will definitely be rereading it. I loved it so much. So that's it. That's everything I've read for the month of December. Do let me know what you've read this month, what's been your favourite. Have any of the ones I said piqued your interest? Because honestly, overall, I really enjoyed the books that I read, even though I had a load of 3-star reads. The ones that I enjoyed, I really enjoyed. And as always, if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. My social media links to my Instagram and Goodreads will be linked below, and I will catch you in the next one.